Welcome to Project Command. I'm Captain Duke Cuneo. We're live here this week at FDIC, getting a chance to meet with some of the best thought leaders and fire service leaders out here in the industry and bring some of those to you here today. Today I'm joined by firefighter Jeff Lenard of Washington, D.C. Fire. Jeff is a 23-year veteran of D.C. Fire. He works on the fireboat right now, and most notably, he was one of the boat responders involved in the aviation incident that happened in January 2025. So we're really excited to talk to him today. We think you're going to enjoy this episode. All right, Jeff, welcome on. I'm really excited to get to talk to you today. And, we've got a lot to cover here, really, in a short period of time, and we want to be respectful of your time. So just to kind of get going, tell us a little bit about yourself and your career and what you've been up to.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. So I've been in the fire service for about 30 years now. I got my start down in Corolla, North Carolina. Then as a volunteered in New Hanover County, which is Wilmington, North Carolina. And then came back up here. Lived in a little time at a firehouse in PG County, and then went to the city of Manassas. I got hired in the District of Columbia in 2004. I was assigned to an engine company for 12 years, and I went uptown to Rescue Squad 2. And then shortly after that, I made my way down to the fireboat, and that's where I'm at now. Loving life.
Yeah, amazing. That's a great assignment. Where Peter and I work, we've had quite a few people that have been up from that Northern Virginia area, D.C., and quite a few people that have actually volunteered in PG as well. So, yeah, there's a lot of common roots there. So, we're really excited to have you here to talk about some of your experiences, and I want to jump right in and really get to it. You responded to the air collision that happened over at the Potomac back in 2025, January 2025 to be specific. I can imagine that when you think about the craziest or biggest call of your career that could possibly happen, those are the sorts of things we talk about, what would happen if there was an air collision. And so really just start out with, tell me about that day. Tell me about what you were thinking when that call dropped and what happened.
Yeah, so it's a once in a lifetime or once in a career time, event. I actually was not in the district the day the crash occurred. I was out in California giving a presentation at Esri to the Cal Fire Chiefs Technology Committee about the common operating picture products that we've been building, one of which is the maritime incident dashboard that we have. And I was at the reception at the time when my phone started going bonkers and realized that it wasn't just an alert. We run aircraft alerts maybe about once a week. The fireboat for the District of Columbia is a Tier 1 response station for that. So I realized it was not just a standard alert. So got on the phone, made some quick phone calls, got some orders to start working. And from California, myself and my colleague at Octo, which is the district's Office of the Chief Technology Officer, so think that agency is the city's IT department. He's the public safety GIS analyst there, Tim Hutchison. We started making configuration changes to the operational dashboard right there. Started calling in some favors from different people. Esri came up and offered any of the services that they had. They said, just give us numbers and what you need. We'll worry about the rest later, kind of thing. And so we started building out what became the backbone for that response. It was the management platform that we used for the entire response. I got back 2 days later, flew in about midnight, right over top of the crash site. It was an interesting, experience. I've never been in a plane that was absolutely silent, right as you're coming in. Everybody, it was a very somber moment, but got in, then went over to the fireboat, spent a couple days standing by. I'm a master public safety diver as well, so spent a couple days standing by, just on board one of the dinner cruises that we had put out there as like a forward operating base, and then got quickly pulled into the role of assisting with the management of the river branch. Once it kind of got into its second, third operational period, it was a mass fatality incident at that point. So things kind of slowed down. The management took a turn, and they said, you're going to be more helpful sitting up here on the radio and building some of these products that we're going to use. And we actually built, Tim and I, from the ground up, a couple of the products that were used that night, and we're continuing to use for the management of the entire incident, about 16 days.
Wow, that's really incredible. So it just so happens that at the time of this incident, you were presenting on and talking about sort of the technological backbone systems of what you would use just days later during the incident. Is that accurate?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
Like an hour later after my presentation is when it happened.
Yeah. So how did you get into the sort of tech side of what you're doing in the fire service, and tell us a little bit about just kind of that systems backbone that came into play there?
Sure, yeah. So I've always had an interest in tech stuff, but I'm not a tech guy. I'm not a computer guy. I just kind of, I really saw the potential in how technology can help us manage things better than the way we're doing it, right? So when I got down to the fireboat, I realized that there was absolutely nothing in the city's CAD system that dealt with maritime. Like there were no marinas were not built out. I mean, it's just an address point on the land somewhere, right? There was the aids to navigations were not in there. There weren't box areas or center lines in the river for, call routing and things like that. And I said, well, we got to do something about this. So they threw me on some committee. It was the OUC, the Office of Unified Communications, and Octo had a working group for CAD to GIS. So I got on that, and that's actually where I met Tim. He was the chair for that group, and he demonstrated a product that the region has through the NCR GDX, the National Capital Region Geospatial Data Exchange, and it's a CAD to GIS platform that they have in integration with their regional CAD to CAD system, and it let us see all the incidents in vehicle, unit locations regionally, and I was like, man, that's what we need, because on the river. There's a place where you have D.C., Prince George's County, City of Alexandria, Fairfax County, Arlington County, all right there. They basically almost all touch except for Arlington in this one place. And, depending on the carrier load, who your carrier is, a 911 call can go to any of those jurisdictions. I know with Next Gen 911, we're getting better with geolocating, but back then, and even still a little bit today, the calls just go everywhere, right? And it takes time for that call to get to the PSAP, for them to decide what they're going to do when they dispatch it. Then somebody has to have the realization that this is not in our jurisdiction, it's the districts or it's Prince George's County, so we got to call them, and then they got to dispatch, and next thing you know, 10 minutes later, all the responders are finally starting to get out and underway, and that just wasn't acceptable, all right? There's a limited number of maritime response assets in the region, and the amount of time you have when you're drowning or your boat is sinking is a lot less, right?
Yeah.
So I said, if there's a way that we can maybe build something like this for us, Tim, I'd like to do that. And he said, absolutely. If you've got some time, I've got some time. And that was kind of a shock to me at first, because normally, when you're in the government, nobody's like, oh, let me put some of my time aside today to help you, right?
Right.
So meeting Tim was where it all started. And we started out with a single thing, and then we built something else. And nobody asked us to do this, but I saw the value in it. And there was some pushback, the two things that firefighters hate, right? Change and the way things are, So
Yeah, definitely.
some folks didn't like the change, but that's okay. We just kept pushing. Nobody threatened me to get sent to day work or something if I didn't stop, so we just kept going. And next thing you know, it became like the banks. It was just too big to fail. Everybody saw the value of going from a situational awareness product that was mainly text in tables, kind of giving you unit tallies and a couple other things, to being able to visualize all of the data on the map. And with the success of that, we realized that we could just keep going. And we come to these tech shows, these trade shows, and look around the room. Everybody's got a dashboard that basically shows them where their fire trucks are, where the calls are, maybe a couple other things, but that's just like the tip of the iceberg if you think about it. We want to put all the data in one place. I walk into our operations center and I see these guys sitting in front of 10 different screens, and I know for a fact there's no way they're gathering all this information, not right. when their partner is in the bathroom or, and it's 2 a.m, they're missing a lot of things. So the kind of next evolution from just getting us that product was figuring out how can we put the important data points in that one place, right? So that you don't have to have 10 different screens with 10 different logins. Maybe this computer system has one thing that's important to me, and this one has 2, and the next one has 1. Well, through APIs, we can bring all of that in, create geospatial layers out of them so that we can do geoprocessing and things like that. And next thing you know, we end up with a product that's integrating things. Right now, we have data sets that include hydrants, its location, its flow, its in service, out of service, vacant buildings, blighted buildings, the solar panels on roofs, green roofs, is the building under fire watch. So within a few seconds, our process that we've created is cross-referencing the dispatched address with our data sets, and then right in front of our responders, it can tell you, hey, this is in the Union Station, zone, because it's a high priority zone that we monitor. Or this building is adjacent to a blighted building, which could be very important, not on a medical call, right? You don't care what's next door, but the second it's a 2 up, 2 down, and there's fire coming out of the Bravo side on a couple windows, and now that vacant is now the exposure, and you're going to have to send folks in there. So it's good to see all that, and from our philosophy, it's good to see it immediately, because it's much easier to tell people to speed up than it is to slow us down. Like when we've all got our mental picture, we turn the corner, there's the column, it's go time, like fast, right? And if somebody all of a sudden is like, hey, there's holes in the floor, like not everybody is going to slow down at the same pace, and we still run that risk. It's much easier to say, hey, this was a blighted building, and when they get there, there's a brand new for sale sign out front. It's been renovated. It's been vacant and blighted for 10 years, but now it's renovated, and have to go get it, boys, like full speed ahead.
It's way easier to flip the switch in that direction than the other. So that's really interesting, and you've done a lot in the space clearly already. But I do see it quite often, and one of the things we talk about is how often firefighters, whether they're sitting in the front seat or even sitting in the comm center looking at things, how often they're just bombarded with tons and tons of information, and you sort of spoke to it with the different systems. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the real challenges is aggregating it all into one spot, into a place where that information is useful and actionable, rather than something that just overwhelms that front seat firefighter that's riding up for the day, right? Mm-hmm. That's the challenge that comes with all this technology and information, is using it in such a way that it actually helps us and doesn't hinder us or make our decision making worse. So I wonder if when you were out there during the incident using some of these systems, if you found that there were hindrances with the technology, or is that part of kind of what you've built going forward because of it?
So we were a couple of years into it at this point, and had it down pretty good, right? The way we set up our maps and visualization is it starts, when you're zoomed out, there's not a lot there, right? And as you zoom in, you start to get finer and finer data points. The data becomes more granular, and some things disappear, right? So that you're kind of trading the amount of data when they zoom into what do they really need to be looking at, or versus what they need to look at when they're zoomed out. So we're trying to relieve that mental load right there, just within the design and symbology of the product. There were some technical challenges. For instance, out there on the river, we ran into some connectivity issues. We're a FirstNet city, and we have a really good partnership with FirstNet. And those folks didn't even ask. They were on the road before we even asked, with, I believe, one of their cows and one of their calves coming from New Jersey. And we need data. The data has to flow, right? So you need connectivity. And they showed up. We got them in place very, very early on. It was a little difficult because we had to get them onto a military base. But once that was in place, the data was flowing out there. And that was really beneficial. One thing that we did early on is Esri had offered us one of their products called Quick Capture. And it's basically for mobile workers to collect data in the field, right?
We use that with Task Force 2.
Exactly, yep. So SARCOB, right?
That's right.
The problem that we ran into extremely early, within the first couple hours, we had 25 response agencies on scene. And what you typically run into in those situations is that not everybody can just download an app to their issued device, right? Every agency has their own protocols for, the department issued devices. So we were like, great, now what? We had this perfect thing we could use. So we turned to another Esri product called Survey 123. It's just like Microsoft Forms, but it's geospatially enabled right out of the box. So we knew that we had to document what we were finding and where we did. We didn't know why, right? It just kind of seemed like the right thing to do. Like, all these people are out there picking up stuff. So we made a form, and it took about 30 seconds to fill out. The first question was, did you find debris? Did you find hazmat contamination, or did you find, a victim?
Yeah.
Then confirm your geolocation, right? So it kind of showed you a map, but it automatically pulled your geolocation. You could take a picture of it, write a quick description of what it was, who you are and what agency you're with, and hit submit. And then within 30 seconds, that dot is showing up on the map, right? And that didn't need to be downloaded. It was an open web form that could be passed on with a QR code. I mean, Tim made a little three-page PDF instruction pamphlet to go with it that you could access, and the guys could text it from one ongoing or offgoing shift to an ongoing one. So that right there, we collected 280 data points through that, and it helped us see over time, the flow of the river where debris was headed. But it also allowed us to be able to hand that data over to NTSB and to FBI for their investigatory files. And nobody had been on the job, or nobody was still on the job when Air Florida happened 40 years prior, right? So we all didn't know what we were doing. So we did that. That was one of what I think is one of our more, I guess you might call it like a shining moment, right? I mean, just out of nowhere, here's the solution for this. And then we did something very similar with the dive targets. So the night, or I guess I should say the morning after the crash, our fireboat guys took it upon themselves to start using their vessel-mounted side-scan sonar to pinpoint the locations of the fuselages, right? And then once they found that, we hooked a towfish up to our boat, which we got through a port security grant, and did an entire sonar scan of the area to kind of determine the scope of the crash and debris fields, right? And once we had that figured out, we went to work identifying dive targets and putting divers in the water. And we were able to to take that data from the sonar system, create geotiffs out of it, and import it directly into our dashboards. And then from that, start analyzing, and then we built another custom app within the dashboard that allowed us to assign dive targets and update the information on each of those data points in the field. So we ended up with just at 100 dive targets. This allowed us at the end of a day to roll out what everyone was going to be looking at the next day. It allowed us to kind of group them geographically so that we could have multiple dive teams out there working at once. And when the guys got out there, they had a version of Quick Capture, but it was field maps on their phones so that they could geolocate themselves right to the target, either drop some sonar, a sector scan sonar, which we got through port security, or a diver in the water. There's a lot of debris in the river, right? Just river junk, old tires, things like that. So it was cold. It was 33-degree water, 34-degree day. So we didn't want to put our divers in. We were expecting those guys to be out there for 8 hours at a time diving. So if we could drop sonar, and just confirm a target or prosecute the target that way, we did that. And then what all this would do with the dashboard is we were able to put the dashboard wherever it needed to be. Whoever needed access, we could grant access to it. So it's at the command post, it's the forward operating base, it's at the Maritime Joint Operations Center, and it's allowing the incident commanders to see everything that's happening in real time. And I think to the men and women out on the boats, like the benefit of that is they stopped calling, right? Every 5 minutes, what do you guys got? What do you find? Send an email, send me an update with this. There was no need for it because they're watching it in real time. The vessel locations, the diver locations. I mean, we even put GPS things on some buoys that we were using to do jack stay searches underwater to just be able to track everything. And that was something we've never had, like full visibility the entire time. The crash zone itself had a lot going in it. The naval salvage supervisor was there with a barge and a crane doing big lifts. Multiple dive teams out there. It wouldn't have been able to happen also without that kind of high-level visibility, because in the MJOC, in the Maritime Joint Operations Center, I was running River Branch. It kind of allowed me to be like a traffic cop. Like normally people are like 300 feet away from the dive boats, we don't want anyone close. And we were able to reduce that distance and safely operate just because of the real-time visibility we had on all the boats and whatnot that were out there.
Yeah. So listening to it, obviously you're talking about an incredibly complex incident that could have been very chaotic, right? But it sounds like this was truly a case study for you all in how these geospatial systems and the newest technologies and dashboards that you would help build and engineer could really make an incident go from absolute chaos to something that you're able to manage at scale. So that's really important and valuable. I want to shift gears here real quick, and I appreciate you sharing so much about that experience. What from that day would you give, to either line officers, but also, even command staff level employees of a fire department, about what you learned that day and what they can integrate into their operations outside of having the ability to build, incredible custom dashboards like you were able to?
Sure, yeah. Looking back at the crash, it was a once-in-a-career incident, but it could have been a lot different, right? Had there been survivors, the incident would have been completely different. But when you get back to the end of it, I mean, I can't harp on technology being what made the difference there. Just because it allows you to increase your speed with which you can conduct operations. I mean, with SARCOP, right? If you were doing all that on paper and had to report back at the end of the day, and everyone would collect all the paper and then try to update a map, and people could look at it for a few minutes, maybe take a picture before they go back to their hotel room and try to look at it before they go to bed, even though they're exhausted. Like, they don't have the visibility in real time that they would if it was in the palm of their hand. So finding a way to be able to do your technology integrations, I think, is really important. But taking a further step back from that, the reason that this worked so well is because we identified a decade ago, no longer than that, the need to have some agreements, right? So there's a Potomac River Rescue Agreement, and all of the maritime stakeholders are signatories of that agreement. So we already have like a groundwork. But that wasn't good enough. It was very, very vague, a couple pages, right? So we revisited it and we updated it, and then we also realized that we needed some better ways to communicate, common operating radio channels. The way we were doing business before was just over Marine VHF. It's commercial radio you can buy for $35. You can have bad actors out there providing false information, jamming your signal or whatnot. There was no wide area coverage like we're used to on a public safety radio system. So getting people all on the mics, which is what we call our Marine incident channels, it's 5 dedicated talk groups for maritime operations. We basically created a maritime domain awareness radio network. When you get dispatched, you might be on, I don't know what you guys call it, but you might be on TAC 1 today for your structure fire, or tomorrow you may be on TAC 3 because TAC 1 and 2 are already assigned to other incidents. It's that revolving usage of those things. And, that was the thing. If somebody's out on the water, they would have to call back to their dispatch, who would then have to call to our dispatch, who would then have to call the boats. And we run into that, that response time gap again. So putting a unified radio channel out there that everybody is aware of ahead of time was also really helpful, right? DC Fireboat, MPD Harbor Patrol, U.S. Coast Guard Station Washington, U.S. Park Police Eagle, which is their helicopter, listen to that thing 24 hours a day. So all the responders are up on it from the inception of the incident. So I guess that'd be kind of my second thing is realizing that large incidents are always going to involve your friends, whether y'all play well or not. They're coming, and it's in everyone's best interest to put some, not ground rules, but just put a couple standard plays in a playbook and all get on the same page. We took it a step further. We do the NCR Waterway Partners Working Group quarterly that we host on our pier, and we bring all of our response partners. It was initially just fire, but very quickly we realized we needed to bring LEO in as well as our federal partners, like FBI, Coast Guard, things like that, because there's a limited number of maritime responders. And that allowed us to put names and faces, together. hash out some of the issues we were having at more of the ground level, not with the the cross bugle level, where, I mean, you guys know as well as I do, things don't always work out well that way, when we can have a talk about something together and work through it. So, yeah, for large scale incidents, it's all about prior planning.
Yeah.
I think,
There's a lot there that I can relate to, and certainly a lot that you said that has resonated. We, with FEMA Virginia Task Force 2, responded to Mitchell County, Western North Carolina during Hurricane Helene. And that incident really stretched the limitations of what you would consider urban search and rescue. We were backcountry in the mountains, and getting all those searches knocked out without SARCOP, and being able to document those over a period of like a week and a half or 2 weeks, it would have been impossible in a lot of ways. We would have probably been there much longer, and there
Absolutely.
been a lot of duplication of effort if we hadn't had that sort of technology and being able to build that sort of common operating picture with the other task forces that were in the region and everything else. So that really resonates. And then the second thing that makes me think about is where Peter and I work. We have the James River. We're sort of the western outpost of what they call Sector Hampton Roads, for the Coast Guard. And so it's a lot of those same interoperability agreements and working with other agencies and figuring out who's where on the river. And so, there's a lot to take in there and to understand if you want to really think about the possibilities of a complex incident. And so you've lived it, and I really appreciate the amount of time you spent going through how that worked out. So we're here live at FDIC. Kind of want to be respectful of your time and wrap up here, but tell us a little bit about your experience here, and maybe if you think that this is a valuable experience for other firefighters and command officers out there, if they should be here too next year.
Full disclosure, this is my first time coming here.
Same, yeah.
I remember going to the Firehouse Expos back in the late '90s, that time frame. And I thought those were valuable back then. Me as a brand new, firefighter, it was different than a guy with 20 years on the job gets when they come to these things. But there's something here for everyone, right? And I think that's important. And more importantly, looking and listening to what other people are doing and learning from it. When you bring people from across the country or even across, the planet to places like this, the opportunities for you to learn and bring back meaningful things that could, facilitate better operations, better administrative operations because that's just as important, right? How the place is actually run, not how we just respond to calls. Getting ideas, making, connections with people, developing a network. I think that's where the real benefit is. Obviously, there's lots of classes here, so knowledge is imparted directly to people. But in my experience, a lot of good things come from, in the evening after the conference, right? When you're just there and randomly, you're talking to one group of friends, somebody else walks up who knows somebody. Next thing you know, a conversation, some of you never met, and hopefully coming up with some, some good stuff, or just sharing common stories, even that, everyone likes to talk about all that stuff, but we can learn from that too. So, for my experience here, I haven't gone to any of the classes. I was part of the Next Gen Technology Conference. I presented there. So just sitting in the room, hearing what people are talking about. It is repetitive. Like, I go to enough of these conferences that I hear the same people talking about the same thing. But every time I hear them talking about it from a different perspective, because we are moving forward. So the last time was in Dallas in December at the IAFC's Technology Summit International. And from just in that time space, we've already achieved some of what we were talking about back then. It's kind of like what was on our wish list, right? So
that's amazing.
It's awesome. And for me, being kind of focused, in on the tech side of things, being in that room and listening to things, and it's small things, right? Because I've already got a lot of things figured out, and then you hear somebody mention something that's like, that is exactly what I should, and make a quick correction in my idea, and now this thing's actually going to work better because we've been scratching our head how to solve this problem. And it was just that thing, an arbitrary comment from somebody has led to us creating a bigger solution. So the value of just being here and making connections and listening and, maybe not doing as much talking as I am right now, but just listening and looking, is very valuable.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we say often that there really should be no secrets in the fire department, right? Like we should be working together to try to build solutions that are going to help the entire industry and our entire fire community move forward. So, looking at this will be my last question for you, by the way. But looking ahead, what advice would you give to a listener that is trying to maybe do similar things to what you've done, like build a dashboard, get some of these technologies integrated for their department? What are the first steps that they should take? Because obviously, getting started sometimes is the hardest part.
Yep, it is. You said something interesting that I can resonate with, and it's about what we should be doing is sharing, right? And I think that was one of the biggest hurdles for the longest time, is people didn't want to share their information, at all. And that wind of change has come, right? Now we see people interested in sharing information a lot more, and that's how you're able. Once you have the data, you're able to start doing things. But I think getting the data is the hard part.
Yeah.
Right. Whether it's an integration with your CAD system and you have a CAD administrator that just is still kind of siloed themselves off. But once you have that, then the next thing is. We did a presentation, Tim and I did a presentation for Esri's Federal User Conference 2 years ago. We spoke at the plenary session, and our presentation was titled "The Team of Two," right? Not our choice for that name, but I like it because that's exactly what it is. You had me, who had an operational problem that we wanted to solve, and really no knowledge of how to do it. And then I found Tim, and he was a GIS analyst looking to do more than just what most GIS departments do, which is work in data sets that are not live and that are not related to emergency operations and things like that. So he was hungry, I was hungry, and we created that kind of partnership, that team of two. So my recommendation would be, to anybody out there that's got an interest in it, start looking around, figuring out, what your department owns in terms of technology. I haven't run across an agency yet that doesn't have some form of ArcGIS online, and that's really it. And then, either YouTube University, actually Esri themselves have a lot of great information and like an online university as well to teach people how to use stuff. But at the end of the day, it's finding your Jeff or finding your Tim is how we ended that. Finding the person who has the technical ability, for me, was all it took, right? And then once I knew that Tim and I could be partners, the opportunities were essentially endless. Like we keep pushing. We've achieved here. Where can we go next? And at first, it was a lot. Like I said, it was probably a year of just, we don't need that. Stop working on that, and it's like, okay, whatever. We just keep going. And that, I would say that to that person, like, don't be discouraged. If you build a product that's better than what they have, it's going to take a minute for people to grow comfortable with it. But like I said, now it's just too big to fail. Everybody wants it. And for me, it was really fun at first. Now I just want my free time back. Like I'm working every day on my days off, getting these products built out. It's supporting everything that we do. The operations deputy said, he can manage the entire city from his office at that point, right? Because he can see everything that's happening. We've utilized it to make a scheduler. So we now know ahead of time what the department's doing that day. Before, we didn't. At 6 a.m., people were running around with their hair on fire, notes on cocktail napkins, trying to, go from one floor to the fire operations center, trying to figure out all the pieces. Hey, Engine 3's got to be at the training school today, but Engine 3's also got a DOH inspection, and Ambulance 3's got to get their oil change today. How do we script all these things? Plus, the company officer wants to go out of service for, we can schedule all that. We can see in real time all of our unit availability, where the calls are, all those things. So, again, just having that thirst to get there, start very small and don't give up is what I would say, and find that person that's on the tech side of the house that can help you achieve what you want.
Yeah, it sounds like really demonstrating value to the point that it's undeniable is the key there, and it seems like you've done
Yes.
that. So I want to give you a chance to kind of promote yourself a little bit here. If people want to get in touch with you, if people want you to come by and speak, anything like that, is there a way they can get in contact with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, my name is Jeff Lenard. My work email address, I'll give that out, is jeffrey.lenard@dc.gov.
And we'll put that in the show notes as well,
Oh,
so people
sweet,
can
okay.
click to it. Yeah.
And I would say, feel free to reach out. Our biggest thing is just trying to promote this and get it out as far as we can, because the value for our responders is unmeasurable, and we just want everybody else to, have at least some of that basic capability. Not everyone can afford, to pay for hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of contracts to do this stuff, and I'm telling you that if you're in one of those situations, you can do this stuff yourself. It's just drive, determination, and finding that right partner to help you get there.
Yeah.
That's it. So.
That's incredible. Well, I think that's about all the time we have for today. But yeah, thank you so much for your time, for coming on Project Command Podcast. And once again, Jeff Lenard. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.